All right, welcome back to Coffee with Coaches, everybody. This is Coach Reese and Coach Loretta here with our, of course, special guest today, Dr. Liesle. We're going to be talking all things motherhood and running. We're talking about before pregnancy, during pregnancy, after pregnancy. I'm personally interested in learning more about this because as a coach who coaches females, it's definitely a subject that needs to be addressed, and we should all be open to having these types of conversations, just so that way we can all be understanding of each other and how we can get the most out of ourselves before, during, and after babies. So welcome, Dr. Liesle. It's always great having you on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. Very excited to have this conversation because I think it's a bit of a hot topic as far as trying to help support moms, whether they're new moms or they're old moms on their postpartum journey, just to restore fitness. Because I think that's one of the things that we find that we have to stay fit, and how can we do that in a safe and fun manner instead of feeling miserable maybe the whole time. So making sure that we can do that. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, and I'm super excited too because, I do coach some females that have had some babies even recently, and Liesle has actually helped me along the way with that. And I kind of wish I had this kind of support when I was having babies, right? Because now I think the topic is more open. People are, having conversations about it. I've learned a lot from the ladies that I run with who have had babies recently, and going to pelvic floor therapists, and actually being proactive going into the pregnancy and then coming out of the pregnancy so that they can run safely the entire time. And I think that that's super important to talk about, and I see this on feeds and on social media all the time, and that's why I'm like, we really should have a conversation about this and really talk about it so we can help other people out there, because I know some people are struggling with either what am I doing while I'm pregnant? What am I doing after my pregnancy? So I'm excited to get into this topic.
Absolutely. I mean, it's also interesting so I have four children, and I was able to run with my first, and then probably at half of the 20 week mark, I was like, oh man, this is heavy. And so definitely that started to kind of change things. And then for me, after my second, I had some really bad pelvic pain, and so let alone I could barely stand up and get dressed, let alone think about even trying to run, because it hurt horribly. And then postpartum, it was still really bad. And as a PT, you'd think I would go see a PT to try to help me. And so actually one of my friends, she was like, well, let me just do a quick correction. I was like, thank you. Oh my gosh, I could kiss you right now. And so it's been fun now that my youngest is going to be 4 next week, to be able to get back to giving my time some self, to be strong and be fit and kind of get back to my original roots. So it's been kind of cool.
Right. You know what I think is cool? The conversations I have on the trail with my friends that are having babies, that they're still staying out there and making time for themselves. And, we do have a conversation about that mom guilt of being out on the trail when their kids are at home or whatever. But then we also have that conversation about how important it is for them, for their mental health, and to keep things, rolling smooth at home, is to have that, time for themselves, that kind of outlet. I know one, even, their husband is like, you need to go for a run, he realizes how important that is, and my friends have ran pretty much up until the day they've delivered. I've been a little worried that I was going to be delivering on the trail before, but it hasn't happened yet. So let's talk a little bit about it. Liesle, share with us changes that are happening while you're pregnant, and what kinds of things we can do to stay in fitness, whatever thing that we like to do as our sport.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, just to interject real quick. I think too that we can also relay this to people who are not only looking to walk, but to run and to live an active lifestyle. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's a lot of these common threads that we can find with pelvic pain and just getting up and walking, or making time for yourself an hour a day to get outside into the sunshine. So I think, regardless if you can or are willing to run during pregnancy, maybe this can apply to just getting out and walking or being active in some other way too. So a lot of these lessons are transferable, whether we're, you know, in flight phase or walking or trying to play pickleball through pregnancy. I'm sure there's a lot of people doing that.
And that's so true, because essentially in general, so I mean, the guideline is that we want to see that we have like I think at least 3 days of moderate like exercise. I mean, which is just good for like heart health and for our body. But when we think about that, our body does go through a lot of change in through pregnancy. And so we think about, yes, we have hormonal changes. So we're going to have a bit of relaxin that's going to creates a bit more laxity through some of our joints. And some of us, we feel that more than others. And so making sure that, okay, well, what does that mean? That means that we have to be strong. And so we think about strong, it's, well, what does that look like? So if you were active, if you had a regular workout routine that you did prior to conception and you feel good, you can keep doing that. It's encouraged to keep exercising. So that can be lifting weights, that can be doing Pilates, that can be doing yoga, that can be caring for maybe the other children that you already have at home, which that's a tiring job too. But then we look to see, okay, our core obviously changes. And so that can look like maybe some pelvic pressure, that can look like some urinary urgency, and that can be just also our diffuse back pain, hip pain, SI pain. So SI pain is going to be, if you were to look at somebody on the backside where those dimples are, and typically SI pain is like, it hurts right here. You can point with it with one finger. So you see those changes to the pelvis, and then that starts to continue to develop through the pregnancy and change and morph as your body is preparing, with the assumption that you're having a vaginal delivery. Whether you have a planned C-section, your body still is going to bring baby down into that birth canal. So we start to see those changes to the pelvis.
So what can you do when you're starting to see that? I have seen some moms that are wearing like a band.
Mm-hmm.
They're running. Is there things that you recommend, or what would be good?
Sure, yeah. So I think the first line of defense is always going to be muscle strength. And so reestablishing the coordination of their pressure system that they have. So all of us at birth are gifted with this beautiful diaphragm up at top. Then we also have our pelvic floor down below. So we want to make sure for all of us, and this can also be for dads too, right, is making sure that as they take a nice big breath in, they can feel that that breath can drop all the way down towards the tailbone. So if you sit here right now, or if you're listening and you're laying down, or you're sitting in the car, I want you to visualize as you take a nice deep breath in, that breath goes down the spine, all the way down to the tailbone and opens on up. So here we're establishing that coordination that we need to have a nice stable system to work off of. So our muscles will always be that first line of defense. We want to make sure that they're able to do what they're able to do. Now, when we think, okay, well, our hormones have changed, it's going to create a lot of, a bit more of laxity through those joints, then we can look at some external support, and that can be our belly bandits, that can be KT tape, which is much less cumbersome, but can also be really helpful. And even now there's more clothing that is designed for women who are exercising, just to give a bit more compression to support belly, support pelvis as they're going into exercise, which is absolutely amazing, because we're seeing that moms can still be fit and feel comfortable while they're exercising, instead of like, oh, I should exercise, but it feels so horrible. It's like, no, we exercise to feel good. So those are just a couple of things to think about, just reconnecting, having our muscles be that line of defense. And then if we need to come around and give some support, we absolutely can do that as well.
I'm seeing some parallel lines too with just like typical therapy, right? Like we have some pretty hypermobile patients that I've seen, I've worked with, who they are so stretchy, so mobile, that like their muscles aren't strong enough to support their body in these different positions that they're in. So it almost sounds like, right, like when we're in pregnancy, or when females are in pregnancy, that relaxin that helps kind of open up some of the ligaments and some of the soft tissue to allow this this living being to grow inside of you, can also bring a little bit of a hypermobility that your body isn't quite used to having, which can then like translate forces into different areas that might cause those aches or some of that shifting around, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times, I think that you don't know that you're hypermobile. And so for those of you who don't necessarily know what hypermobile means, it's just you're like a really flexible person, right? And so when now that chemical change happens and you're like, wow, like I just step and I roll my ankle. It's like, okay, well, again, we still want to start to think about being able to train somebody to be able to do things. So like some actionable items. We already talked about the breath, like how can we keep that coordination? But even the concept of doing something as simple as standing on one foot and balancing. And I have a bias is to being barefoot. And so making sure that those small foot intrinsic muscles have the ability to help give you some input from the ground and be able to work and give you some of that stability starting all the way down at the ground. So in the morning, it's like, okay, well, y'all have to get up, take a shower, wash your face, brush your teeth. It's like, well, what if I'm just going to stand there on one foot and just balance? And as I'm saying that, I'm going to make sure that my pelvis stays level and I'm not going to be, side shifted one way or the other. So we can start to introduce some of these things of habit stacking that are very simple that we can do throughout our day. And what might work for one person might not work for somebody else. And so that's where it is also important to contact your local pelvic floor PT to see, hey, how can I benefit from your care? Because again, whereas a lot of us can maybe benefit from the same exercises, we all are created differently. And sometimes what is one person's deficit is somebody's strength. So making sure that we have the ability to really be a bit more specific for what that female needs on her journey at that time. And even with consecutive pregnancies, it might look different. So that's just hopefully my plug. Go see your pelvic floor PTs.
I think we talk a lot about, having a team, as athletes to support us. So a pelvic floor PT would be great to have on hand. What about chiropractor or massage?
Yeah. So, there's so many different practitioners out there that can help you. And again, it's your body. And so I think it's important that you make just informed decisions that these individuals can help you and that they exist. At the end of the day, if you find that that makes you feel better, then absolutely go get a prenatal massage or a postpartum massage. I have a lot of patients ask me, do you think massage would be helpful for me? I said, well, do you like when people like massage your shoulders or like, massage your back? Like, no, I don't. I said, well, then I don't think that massage is really the best fit for you. And so you have to see kind of like what jives with what they like. And then even with chiropractic care, there's a handful of ways for one to have an adjustment. And so some chiropractors will do check reflexes. Some will do muscle testing to see where you might have a segment might be out. Some will just go ahead and do an x-ray to see. So again, there's so many different modes to help our patients, and that is what we want to do, is we want to help them live their best life. So I'm all game for having members of a team, your chiropractors, your massage therapists, to help you feel the best that you can feel, and then to be like the best mom, spouse, girlfriend, who you want to be moving forward through that pregnancy and then through postpartum. So 100%, yay team, yay team.
Is there any other symptoms that people might not be aware of that you might feel differently when you're doing movement and when you're pregnant?
Yeah.
Walking or running?
Yeah, so I think typically what we see with walking, I think this will be an interesting conversation too with Reese as he starts investigating movement with 3D, with walking and seeing how that translates to running, is that sometimes what we feel with walking, it can be amplified with running. So for instance, if I have some pubic pain, that when I walk, it feels atrocious. So for those of you who have not experienced it, it feels like you've just been kicked super duper hard each time you put weight on that limb. And so then if we think, well, I'm going to go for a run, it's like, maybe not the best idea. because when we run, there's going to be 2 to 3 times the amount of force through that limb, and that's going to be transferred up through our system. And if you said, I need to go for a run for my own mental health, it's like, okay, well, that's fine, but just realize that you could be really irritating some of that surrounding tissue and won't always feel the greatest. And so that's a decision that you have to then start to weigh risk versus reward when we think specific to, say, running, making sure that you find that balance. I know, like I had said, when I was pregnant with my second, I had really bad pubic pain, and I woke up one morning, and it wasn't traumatic either. So it wasn't like a traumatic, like I slipped or I fell or nothing. I woke up one morning and I looked at my husband. I said, I don't think I can go to work. He said, why not? I said, I can't even walk. And he said, what do you want to do? I was like, I don't know. I don't know right now. And so I went to work, and it was really rough. And then after I had my son, like, I had to sit down to get dressed, and I was 30 years old, and I thought, wait, I have to sit down to get dressed? What on earth is going on? And it lasted for a while, and part of it was, and I'll throw this in there too, like I was nursing, so my hormones were still a bit wackadoodle, and I couldn't really get back to running for probably a solid like 6 or 9 months, because it just hurt to walk. And then if I did some jumping, I would start to feel some of that similar pain. If I went to do a hop, so jumping is going to be 2 feet, hop is 1 foot, it was rough. And as a PT, and even as a pelvic floor PT, I was like, I can't rationalize this like that. This is a good decision in my brain. And I really wanted to. I was like, I'm going to do it. And I would just run to the mailbox. I was like, that was dumb. Like, and I live in the city, so it was like a house distance. I was like, okay, well, I guess we're not going to run to the mailbox. So that's probably, so some things, again, doesn't have to be traumatic for women. They can wake up one morning and think, what just happened? But this is where, having your practitioners on board can be super, super helpful to help to kind of get you back where you need to be. Talking about other changes, like we talked about nursing. If we're a nursing mom, thinking about the posture that we get into nurse, and then what that might look like transferring over into our fitness. So if you think about, for those who have children and have nurse, sometimes you get into the most awkward positions, but baby is happy. So you're just going to kind of sit there for a minute. You're like, okay, and you're just like in this super awkward, like crump position. And you do that for maybe 15 minutes, maybe longer. Maybe they fall asleep and you're exhausted. So you're just going to try to take a little nap in this awkward position. But appreciate that that's going to also create some change through the upper back, through the neck, through that, like through the low back now, because you're in a slouch posture. And then we think about going to go for a run, and we think, yowza, like those areas that I felt while I was holding my child, like they're much louder and they're really cranky right now. So again, some things that we don't think about in the moment, but then months of nursing, or even just holding your child, it just starts to build up.
So what do you recommend for that?
Yeah. And so there's so many nursing pillows. We think about nursing, or there's so many pillows, that exist out on the market to give support. And if you don't have the financial means to have a nice pillow to help support you, then we think about, well, let's just use the pillows around us. You can roll up towels and have that for support. So and this is, I think, the hardest thing is the mindfulness. Like, what am I doing right now? And again, I'll even just kind of do a little plug for our dads, is they will fall into some of these same postures as well that moms do, and then they start to have some back pain as well. So making sure that we have that mindfulness, like, where am I at? If I think about posture, I want to think I can be upright And then I can slouch if I want, or I can arch my back. I can move in and out of posture fluidly without feeling like, ooh, that's uncomfortable. That you should be able to do that. When we start to get into a pickle is when we can't move through those motions. It's like, oh, wait, I'm stuck there. Like, I can't move. And then when we think about things that get stuck, then those forces don't get transferred. And that, kind of as Reese says, those forces get distributed in a different fashion just to offload some other area. And then we have pain. And then now we're chasing, well, what spot started it first? We just, was it you were sitting on your knee and now your knee hurt, but then that'll put some pressure on your SI joint, but then you did something on the left side because you weren't paying attention. So now it's like, where did it all start? And it becomes this whole cycle of be able to peel back the layers on top of sleep deprivation, hormone changes, changing, just being a mom is a lot of change because your whole world is just shifted, and nobody can prepare you for it. Even these lovely podcasts, they can't prepare you for it. Sorry guys, I'm trying to give you some just awareness.
So you mentioned that was one of my questions. Sleep deprivation, I mean, during pregnancy, because you're just having trouble sleeping because of, the uncomfortable positions you need to get into so you can feel comfortable to sleep, or postpartum, now we have a baby and we're awake a lot. So how does that impact us as athletes or as humans, just, moving throughout your day?
Yeah. And sleep deprivation, like, we need our body to be rested to be able to process the environment around us. So to be able to understand, like, handle our emotions. I mean, I'm not sure if you can go, like, remember when your kids were younger, like, when you were sleep deprived, like, something silly would happen and you might, like, lose your mind, just like, I'm going to, or there's all these, like, cute videos of, like, a spouse comes in, or a partner comes in and says, hey, I need you to, and, like, the mom just freaks out. So it's important to get rest, because our body doesn't necessarily know. When we think about just training for something, if you're training for an ultra, your body doesn't always know the difference between, like, that was physical stress, like I just ran a 26-mile training run, versus I only slept 3 hours and it was broken. It's going to say, I need rest. And and this is always the hard part, is because you have to find that balance of, well, maybe today I'm not going to get that 20-mile run in. Maybe I have to break it up, because in order for your body to build strength, it still has to recover. And if it never gets to recover, you're probably not going to be as satisfied with your training progress. I see Reese nodding here, so I know, like, it just resonates with a lot of different, I mean, not even different, there's a lot.
Yeah, for the listeners that are familiar, this is the concept of allostasis that we always talk about, that I'm huge into. It's that we only have one stress bucket, and when that bucket overflows, bad things happen. Injury, emotional meltdowns, emotional withdrawal, but a lot of different things contribute to that bucket, whether it's training stress, whether it's life stress, whether it's hormonal imbalances, sleep or lack thereof, like connection with your partner, or heavy work, things like that. So once that one bucket fills up and it overflows, we need to have multiple tools to recover. Sleep can be one of them. Taking away different stresses can be another. And, like, we want to always encourage, like, taking time for yourself and being physically active. But I think sometimes too, like, us runners, like, I just recently came across this quote of, like, the biggest pathology to hit the running community is that there's never enough, right? Like, there's a lot of us runners who want to keep going and keep going and keep pushing that envelope for as much as we can handle at one time, when sometimes, we need to scale back and think, okay, maybe an hour isn't appropriate today. Maybe 30 minutes is appropriate based on my family circumstances today, as well as the lack of sleep that I got last night. But Dr. Liesle, I want to back up a little bit, and I want to ask you if there's any contraindications, say if somebody is in the early or middle stages of pregnancy, besides listening to your body and listening to pain, that would lead somebody to say, you know what, maybe impact activity is not appropriate right now.
Yeah, I mean, as far as, and that's where you have, like, the first piece becomes listen to your body. You're just having your monthly checks in the first half to see like how is baby doing, how is mom doing, and so some of those things I think individuals tend to be very intuitive as to like something's not right. Like, and again, could that be because maybe your blood pressure is a bit higher, and if you have access to chest stand, like absolutely. We start to look at gestational diabetes and how that can impact somebody's training. And so as far as being able to go to impact, it's still going to be, how are you feeling? And then also, do you have this spidey sense that says, this isn't great, and that like you should probably listen to your body, or that's when you reach out to a practitioner, and that can be your OBGYN, that can be your midwife, that can be your doula, your pelvic floor PT, your chiropractor, even some of our allies, our exercise professionals, our coaches can say, okay, well, have you thought about these things, just to kind of give you just a different lens to look at. So I wouldn't say loud contraindications, apart from like you have to listen, you have to be honest with yourself, and sometimes it's the hardest piece, because you don't want to be honest with yourself. Like this is part of who you are, and so I think being honest, right, that's hard. It's super duper hard for all of us. But yeah, so I think that's going to be the one thing to think about. Honesty is the best policy, guys.
It's so hard to do it with other people, let alone like it's even more hard to do it with ourselves, because nobody can outwardly see if we're lying to ourselves, right? And I think that just goes to like any injury out there in particular, is let's be honest with ourselves with how bad that nagging would actually is,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and even the concept of just some ideas to like help with like sleeping is also sharing the load with your partner and communicating. And I can think back to when I was pregnant with my husband was training for the Detroit Marathon, and right, being super pregnant, he was getting up at 3:30 in the morning to go for his training runs, then going into work. I was going to work, and then he was coaching, and I didn't use my words very well to say, hey, I'm exhausted. I need more support. And that was also, like Reese just said, like an emotional stressor. I'm just like, this is bogus. Like, why aren't you listening to me? But I wasn't talking. Like 12 lashings for Liesle. Like she wasn't using her communication. And I think that's another piece that women need to think about, is being honest with themselves, using communication. And that's two super hard things to do 100%, because we don't like communicating if it's going to create any type of tension, right? We just like, it's all going to fix itself. Just like when we have a baby, it's all going to be beautiful. And it's just like this cute little stork just dropped off my human, and my body's going to bounce back just like that. It's going to be wonderful. Sorry, ladies, it's not how it works.
That really resonates with me. My partner Dan and I always talk about, there's things that we want from each other, and then there's things that we say that we want from each other, and we can really only be accountable for those things that we say we want of each other. A lot of times, you think about something and it never comes across. And how do we know you need more support during pregnancy, or you need a different type of support, or you need something else unless you vocalize it? That's huge. Using words is always important.
So we've talked a lot about, while we're pregnant. Let's kind of go into postpartum. We've had this baby, our bodies are feeling different. When can I return to being active? What things should I be, looking for as signs that I'm ready to be able to start moving again?
Yes, in an ideal world, if you are having a hospital delivery, I think being able to just have a conversation with the pelvic floor PT to just understand this is where your body is now. These are some strategies you can use day one to care for yourself and care for your child. If you're having a home birth or you're at a birthing center, still having dialogue with a practitioner to say, again, this is what you have right now. These are some things to work on. So day one, you can still work on some of that coordination. If you had a C-section, and maybe we should talk about this in a minute, because that's a whole different ballgame. We still want to make sure that you have the coordination, be able to manage pressure, because sometimes we feel great, say 3 weeks post, because we've been walking, we feel awesome, and now we start to go for a run, and now we start to feel some pressure. And you can't really determine where that pressure is. Just like maybe it's in like the lower abdomen. Maybe you feel like something's falling out sensor of your vagina. Like you are just like, what is happening? Or you start to feel like that urge to go to the bathroom, like strong urge, just while you're running. Like, man, I just went to the bathroom before I left, and now I have that strong urge again. Like, what is going on? And then there'll be the last piece of just like, I'm not sure if that's sweat or if that's something else. Nope, that's a lot more than sweat. So we can have some of that leakage that happens. And so if it's okay, and this is one thing as a practitioner, like I have to remember, if it's okay with you and you don't care if you feel those things, then I'm going to try to support you on your journey. However, I do want you to feel strong and be informed to make the right decision, that I feel comfortable. I don't have discomfort returning back to impact training. If you can jump, if you can hop, generally speaking, we think that you can run. And that's going to be different for each female. Just like we talked about the stressors coming into the bucket. So say that you have a great support team, which is lovely. Your recovery postpartum, maybe 3 weeks. And you're like, I feel awesome. But for someone else who maybe doesn't have as much support, or maybe there were health complications with their little one, their recovery might be a bit longer, and maybe they aren't getting as much sleep as they need, and they might not be eating as much as they should when we talk about nutrition of how much you should be eating. So that varies. And of course, nobody likes that answer, like, well, when can I get back to running? So that depends. And people are like, that depends. Just tell me, when can I do it? It's like, I can't give you a solid answer until I assess your strength, your mobility, and see where you're at. So unfortunately, it's not like that clear line. And then the other piece, and Loretta had already kind of touched on this, was mom guilt. It's real. And so for one person, they're like 3 weeks out, they're like, bye guys, it's been real, I'm taking some time for me. And there's others who are like 10 years out, oh, now I feel like I can take time for me, and are like, oh, it's my turn now, I feel good, I can do this. So as much as I would love to have like a clear answer to say, this is when you can get back, it's going to be different for each person. You have to look at the whole picture of how little is, how your support team is, how you feel. And again, those pieces of honesty kind of circle back around, but also seeing like, you know, the pelvic floor aspect of it, like how am I recovering from that? I wish it was so much more simple, like black and white. That's what we need.
That would be nice.
Give me step 1, give me step 2, give me step 3.
Yeah, that's what we all want. Just a simple, easy answer, right?
Let's just forget that we're all individual humans.
Right. I just want to share kind of just a little story about an athlete that I coach, and Liesle has worked with her as well. And she came to us, I want to say like 3 months postpartum, would you say? Somewhere in there, and her goal is to run a 100-mile race. So I guess I'm telling this because it's kind of a bit of an inspirational story. This is her second baby, and her first baby, she had a lot of pain, some issues. That was before Liesle was involved with her. She was seeing another pelvic floor physical therapist. So she knew going into this second one, she wanted to be smart about returning to running so that she didn't get into the situation she was with her previous baby. So luckily, Liesle was part of our team, and she came back to me as a coach, and we're training her for a race that's in October. And so it's been really great because together, Liesle and I kind of partnered in the beginning with looking at her and like what kinds of things does she need for support as far as strength and mobility to keep her healthy, and then how are we going to return her to run so we're not doing it too quickly where she's, you know, having setbacks, but yet progressing her in a fashion so she could be ready to run a 100-mile race. So, you know, she started with us probably about a year ago, would you say?
It was. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for one, I think it was really smart of her. She gave herself a lot of time. She had already started doing a little bit of returning to run before she came to us, but then she was ready to start moving to the, you know, next steps. Do you want to talk about that a little? Because I think that has been a really great situation, and she's done really well with it. You know, we started out with the initial consult, and then she actually did buy some more visits with Liesle so that she could have them strategically placed throughout her training if she needed the support of her, especially with pelvic floor health.
Yeah, I mean, and part of it was interesting too, because it started all the way down at the foot and ankle, like that, and that was a part of her shift. And she did a race. Oh gosh, when was it? And she felt great.
This summer, yeah. A couple months ago.
So
she actually won first female.
So it's
in a 50-miler.
And that's essentially what we want to see is like, where is it that we break down? Because we had, you know, pre-existing things that were going on, and maybe this even goes back to like prenatally, like before you even had your first child. It's like, well, where do we have any of these areas of vulnerability? And we take a look and see now. And so now we have to take a look, like, okay, yep, I twisted my ankle. I always had left hip pain, and then I had some right pubic pain. So it's like, okay, well, let's make sure we have mobility through our ankle. We have the strength through our knee, through our hip. Then we start to look at lumbopelvic control. And for her, this was like kind of important to make sure that she had the coordination, she had the strength, and it didn't reproduce any of her previous symptoms she had after her first pregnancy. And so we kind of use that as like the test, like, okay, how's that feel? She's like, ooh, that feels kind of bothersome. I don't know. It's like, okay, well, let's try that. When you stop, does it go away? Yep. Okay, cool. Well, let's proceed with caution. So I always use like that stoplight method as far as symptoms. It's like, okay, is there discomfort? Yes. Okay, let's try to modify. And so symptoms could be, in this case, like there was some pain, pressure. It's like, okay, well, let's go ahead. Let's like dial it back. Let's modify. How is that? That's better. That's better. Cool. Yellow light, proceed with caution. Nope, that got worse. Red light, stop. I feel great. Green light, keep going. And so it's been fun to see over, and this is the other thing too, kind of backing up a bit, is like giving yourself time, because you can't, strength takes time. To build strength takes time. So we think about pure strength gains, and that's going to be like 8 weeks of slowly building on. So that's why you have a coach that puts you through these proper phases of training, to make sure that you have the strength to get there. And so she gave herself ample amount of time and grace to make sure that she felt strong, had her symptoms in check, so that she could be racing coming up, which is so exciting.
Yes, and what is other thing cool is, you know, she really went all in on getting stronger, you know, strength-wise, and Liesle and I helped to support her with, you know, she didn't have all the strength equipment maybe that she wanted, but that's all right because she had 2 children now, you know, so we started with baby for the lighter weight, and then we moved to toddler for the heavier weight, you know, so there was ways that she could incorporate that into her training and incorporate her family as well. So it's been a really fun journey with her. So I'm super excited for her to finish her 100 here soon.
So exciting. Yeah, I mean, so we find ways to still be strong and still also have mom strength. And so this is the other, like, I think, you know, the concept of like, yeah, oh yeah, mom strength or dad strength, like you grow with your children. So my oldest is 10 and he's probably like 70 pounds. And God bless him, because some days he's very defiant. And I said, if I have to move you, I will. And he's like, you can't pick me up. I said, bet me. And so I'm like 125 pounds. And I also have been telling myself, okay, you need to make sure you can still move him at least until he's like 14. If he's going to say, I'm not moving, that you still have like mom strength to be like, go ahead, test me. And so mom strength becomes like a real thing because you're growing with your children. And for those moms out there who are listening that have 2 children, and you have to have like one in a car seat, and then the other one maybe isn't listening, or is like, hold me, hold me. You have like 30 pounds on one side, 30 pounds on the other side. So you're doing like a farmer carry and like this awkward like shoulder, like, oh, it's hilarious just to see how you have to be strong to care for your children, and mom strength is real.
Oh, that's great. So I just want to touch on this a second, so now we've had this baby and our body has changed, right? Mm-hmm. Our hips have changed, our breasts have changed. We might be nursing, we might not be nursing, but we still have a change of our body, right? Mm-hmm. We may weigh a little bit more because we, still have some of the baby weight there. Tell us how do we handle that? Because it is going to change our running gait. It's going to change the way we're moving, right?
Yep.
Any suggestions as far as that?
Yeah. So let's start from the top down. So making sure that we have supportive garments for our breastises. So I found like the She-Fit bras were really helpful because they helped me give a bit more support. So if you aren't familiar with how their Impact sports bra is, you can adjust at the top, and then you can adjust around like the midsection at the band. And so as your ribs start to change, you can snug it up a bit more because now baby's not pushing up through there. But then if you're nursing and say you are maybe in between feeding sessions, but you want to go out for a quick run, you're going to snug the girls up real tight so that they aren't moving, so you get a letdown and are just like, it's just going to be a mess. So you can snug the girls up real tight. So now they're nice and stable. You can get out and do what you want to do. Kind of moving on down, it's like, okay, well, maybe initially postpartum, you're going to have a bit more compression garment for our pants that go maybe a bit higher. So they're supporting the abdomen while you're building strength. And again, still going back, like you still want to use your muscles to strengthen. So thinking about through the shoulders, making sure that we have strength through the backside, that we start to introduce those abdominal strength, but like garments as well that you can have to give you that support just initially. It doesn't have to be forever, but just for right now. Those are some of the things that can be super helpful, and even like footwear is going to change as well. And so making sure that maybe the shoes that you had, and say you loved wearing your adrenalines, your Brooks adrenalines, and they were like your favorite shoe ever, but your foot has changed, and so now you have to go to something that's a bit more wider and has a bit more support. So maybe you're going to go into a topo because there's a bit more space for your toes, has just a little bit of support for that foot, a little bit of that heel counter, and you can feel comfortable. It might be a bigger shoe size. So things that, again, we don't think about. It's like, oh yeah, well, I wore these. It's like, it might not feel comfortable. So don't try to be Cinderella's stepsister and like squeeze into this tiny little shoe. You're not going to feel comfortable.
This is great. So much great information about, being pregnant, post-pregnancy. I do want to step back a second. So what if I'm thinking about conceiving? Is there things I could do that would prepare my body that would be good prior to actually getting pregnant?
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to all things as we should. I mean, ideally, we should be getting proper sleep, proper nutrition, stress management. Like, how are we managing all those things? Because if our body is constantly under stress, that can most certainly impact it. And again, some of us are not always blessed with the ability to conceive really, really fast. And that's when we need to have our practitioners that can come in, and that's where, again, chiropractic care, our functional nutritionists can come in, pelvic floor PT can come in to be helpful. And I'm sure I'm probably missing a handful to help make sure, like, let's take a look at your system. What can we do to provide the most proper homeostasis so that you can grow this beautiful human, and it feel like a beautiful blessing, right? And again, some of us are blessed that it's just a boom, and others we don't we aren't as fortunate. And so it is a blessing to be able to have a beautiful human that we can grow and call our own.
Thank you.
Yeah. So just things done. I'm sure there's like, I think our nutritionist would be like a really good source of information.
As far as physical fitness, strength that we would want to maybe focus on a little bit to be prepared, or?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's interesting that you're like thinking about that, is that if you tend to be a more hypermobile person, then in the back of your mind, you might want to think, okay, how can I have a nice, strong pelvic floor and core system so that I can be ready for these body changes. But I also think just knowledge is going to be super helpful to know that there are going to be changes, and that's going to be an expectation. Your body's going to change and going into it, versus like, I had no idea my hips were going to get bigger, and that my boobs were going to get bigger, and that my neck was going to hurt, and that my mid back was going to be uncomfortable, and that my feet constantly swell up towards the end of pregnancy in the summertime. So just knowing that changes happen can be helpful as well. So I think knowledge is going to be the first.
That's good.
Larger piece. Yeah.
So we touched on it a tiny bit, but let's have you just elaborate a little bit on, we've talked a lot about vaginal delivery. What about C-sections and the change of your bodies and returning to run and all that good stuff?
And so this is probably one of my biggest pet peeves, is like it's a surgery. It's a major surgery. Having a C-section is a major surgery. And the expectation is like, oh, but you know what? You just had surgery. Great. Have fun. Here's your human. Have fun. Good luck. And so making sure that women are inspecting their incisions to make sure that there is mobility through that they are given some ways to transfer so that they feel, so it's not painful, because that's going to also impact their just overall mental, emotional status. Giving her time to heal, and this is probably going to be harder, remembering that it is a surgery, that you have to give your body time to heal, and then listening to it, like, ouch, that hurts. Okay, pause, step back. How does that feel? After 8 weeks, that's typically when most women are having, like, given a clearance. But again, depending on your environment, your healing time may be a bit slower, maybe it's faster, but making sure that you give your body time to heal post-operatively, and you have a support team in place. And that's going to be making sure that you have meals, maybe meal prepped. I know it's taking a bit of a tangent, but having meals on your bed so you can feed yourself, and so you can feed another human, that you have somebody there to help you get baby. And again, that can be family members, that can be friends, that can be your spouse. You need to have a tribe to help you in the first couple of weeks post C-section. And I don't know that information is always warned. It's just like, hey, yeah, you're gonna have C-section. It's gonna be good. Here's your baby. They're beautiful. Godspeed.
I think that's really important to touch on too, is just the idea of the importance or the gravitas that it has on the human body. I in jest always say that, pregnancy is, of course, a blessing. Of course, it's a miracle. But of course, pregnancy in and of itself is a traumatic event on the body. And then you add a cesarean section on top of that, and you're just, there's a lot of change all at once. So maybe, Loretta, to go back to the original point of, what can we do before pregnancy for the pregnancy? Maybe before pregnancy, that's when we start working on, okay, have you been incorporating some sort of breath work to get in touch with your diaphragm or your pelvic floor? Have we been incorporating some abdominal activities to get back in touch with your transversus abdominis? Have we incorporated any other strength exercises just to make your body a little bit more robust before going in? As well as, I suppose, after surgery too, of course, work with a practitioner, with somebody who's skilled in returning after pregnancy to exercise. But there's gradual and gentle ways to reincorporate muscles back into this holistic system. And a lot of times when we go through that trauma of the body, there's not always a one-to-one response of like, okay, this area was injured and now this area is better and all systems are back online, right? Sometimes we have to like guide the body back into wanting to use certain areas or being mobile or being strong in certain areas that have just undergone trauma. Dr. Liesle, I just want to get your thoughts on that. Am I kind of overstepping the ideas, or would that be some good advice for people too? If you're thinking about having a baby, maybe now is the time to incorporate some of those things that you haven't been incorporating.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, and it's always interesting because we don't know that it's dysfunctional until it's a problem, right? It's like, well, this is how it's always been. And so I think it becomes like, yeah, the education of connecting with your body and knowing what is common, what is normal, and what's going to be most efficient for you to have. But yeah, and this is where, again, we have allies in the world to like just help you be the best that you can be. And I think that becomes super, super important. So to have allies like the two of you becomes really important, because then we're helping so many people and guiding them to where they need to be so that they can have, be fit for themselves and fit for their children and fit for their spouses and their partners. Right? When mom's happy, everybody's happy.
Happy wife, happy life.
I think there's so much more that we could probably touch on, and I could probably go on more tangents, so I apologize for that. But because there's just so much information out there that not everybody is even knows exists. So I think that I appreciate being able to just even drop some different thoughts and outside the box too, of just like trusting yourself, listening to your body, being honest with yourself. That those pieces, like, again, we need to hear it a bit more before we'll actually take the advice. And so thank you for giving me time to just chat with you all this afternoon.
Well, thank you for jumping on, for giving us so much information and so many great things to think about. Like we always love having you on, and we appreciate every moment that we get to spend with you talking with our listeners, for sure. So thank you for coming on, and thank you for being so gracious with your time.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much. And if anybody has any topic ideas that you'd like to submit for us to bring Dr. Liesle back on, feel free to drop us a message and we would love to bring her back. So it was great spending time with you guys today, and we'll see you again soon.
Sounds great.
Bye.
Have a great day,
Bye, everybody.
guys.
Take care.